The number of reported migrants dying after crossing the U.S.-Mexico border continues to rise.
This as the caseload of unidentified human remains grows for a Texas group of anthropologists.
Border reporter Oscar Margain met with researchers who've returned to South Texas to unearth more migrants buried in a mass grave.
The first step is trying to figure out where migrants are buried. The second step is to do the exhumations, which is what you see here today. And really the third step and the longest step is to try to identify these individuals.
Dr. Kate Sproutley, joined by her team of anthropologists and student volunteers from Texas State University and the University of Indianapolis, are back for a fourth time in Falfurrias, Texas. In 2013, they first uncovered a mass burial of unidentified human remains at the Sacred Heart Cemetery. Since then, they've unearthed 270 John and Jane Does across 4 Texas counties that they've taken back to a lab in San Marcos, where they collect data with hopes of returning them to loved ones. Only 30 have been positively identified.
There could be 50 more people buried here. There could be 100 more people buried here.
Most are suspected migrants who have died trying to evade capture by walking through vast Texas ranch lands. And while these researchers work to identify those buried improperly before 2013, migrants continue to die crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. A recent report by the International Organization for Migration shows migrant deaths jumped from 296 in 2017 to 341 in 2018. Almost half of them died crossing the Texas border.
For every one found, there's a lot that aren't found, so it's really a very low number.
It's a statistic that South Texas Human Rights Director Eddie Canales links to a broken immigration system.
We need the labor. We need to create those mechanisms that doesn't force people to dangerous areas, that doesn't create the collateral aspect of a failed policy, and that's migrant deaths.
Little progress has been made on other fronts, like getting the FBI to share their data on missing migrants so researchers in other countries can compare it to theirs for quicker identification. Another challenge is getting local governments along the border to change the way they handle recovered human remains.
They're just taken and buried, and no DNA sample, no missing persons report, or no death investigation,
complicating their effort to streamline a process that makes treating the dead more humanely. In Falfurrias, Texas, I'm Oscar Margain reporting.